Superstar rock band The Eagles' Hotel California isn't just an iconic album. It's now the center of a high-stakes legal battle over handwritten lyrics, a dismissed criminal case, and a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. The personal injury firm of Ashton and Price is here today to wrestle with the questions of who owns a musician's handwritten words and what happens when memorabilia meets the law. Let's welcome attorney Craig Ashton. Hey, Craig, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so Craig, we know you're not connected to the case, but please start by helping us understand who's involved and what's at play here.
So we'll call this Lollywood.
Yeah.
So essentially we've got Don Henley, who's one of the basically progenitors of the Eagles, one of the most famous kind of iconic rock bands in U.S. history.
Yeah.
And basically had a handwritten notes of the Hotel California that he wrote with basically Glenn Frey.
Yeah, classic song.
Yes, so it's a classic album. So it turns out that there's 5 biggest U.S. selling albums, and I'll see if you can guess a couple of them.
Oh, no, I knew a quiz was coming. Oh, gosh, a couple of them. I don't know, Craig. Maybe something from AC/DC?
Well, you're too young to know albums because you only know streaming.
I know
You only got to vote like 2 years ago. So basically Led Zeppelin was number 5.
Okay.
And then the Beatles, the White Album.
Okay.
And then AC/DC, Back in Black.
Okay.
And then Hotel California.
Wow.
And then Thriller. Is
Okay.
In the U.S. So this is like the second highest all-time selling album in the United States.
Wow.
Anybody who's under 35 probably doesn't know what an album is, but back in the day when things would come on vinyl and you put it on. So anyway, handwritten notes.
Yes.
And so the issue is not necessarily a copyright issue, but basically whether or not these notes were abandoned or whether or not Don Henley still owned them.
So why do legal battles over memorabilia like this happen?
They happen a lot. You remember O.J. Simpson, so he did not get convicted of murder, but he got convicted essentially of armed robbery, trying to get back his memorabilia. And then you've got Rudy Giuliani, who's got World Series rings, and he wanted to keep those too. So in this particular case, memorabilia basically is something that you need to authenticate, and you need to make sure that the person selling it to you is a bona fide seller.
Okay. I didn't know that. Okay, and then when we talk about owning song lyrics in this case, what does that actually mean? Is it about controlling who can perform or profit from the song, like with cover songs and royalties, or is it more about the physical piece of paper as a collectible item?
A good question. So basically, just intellectual property is kind of broken down to 3 things. We know what patents are, so you protect an idea.
Right.
And then you've got copyright, which is a text, so it's more like, a poem or a book. And then you've got trademark, which is basically kind of a symbol that identifies your company.
Yeah.
So in this case, if it were the actual lyrics, the content of them, that would be copyright.
Okay.
But in this case, this is like the actual handwritten notes that a biographer got in like 1979. And then 25 years later, they pop up for sale. And the idea is, well, are those abandoned?
Right.
Like if you lose your wallet at some point, you lose your wallet, right? Versus are they something that they didn't know that they didn't have, and therefore it's larceny, which is the taking of the property of another with the intent to permanently deprive.
Yeah, a big part in determining how this goes. And let's talk about the criminal case and the civil case. What's the difference between the two, and why does this one keep going?
So O.J. Simpson's a really good example because no matter how old you are, you pretty much know this case. So O.J. Simpson, at first, was about ready to lose his liberty, which is essentially the state exercising their rights against an individual citizen to say that you broke the rules of the basically state or the federal government, and you lose not money but your liberty. Civil cases are not losing your liberty but losing money or assets. So the criminal case in this case was basically the taking of the physical handwritten notes from Don Henley with the intent to permanently deprive, which is a conspiracy to commit larceny, which is a crime where you can go to jail for, versus the malicious prosecution case, which is you wrongfully instituted a cause of action against me criminally, and I want money in return for the risk that you put me at.
Craig, as you break this down for us and make it more digestible, can we talk about the notion of malicious prosecution and how it fits with this case?
Right. So another good example right now is what happened with Jay-Z and that 1-800-BUZZBE guy. So I'm a personal injury lawyer, and we don't go on TV and go, 1-800, you're going to win money, it's a lottery. It's not like that. But In the Jay-Z case, there was a 13-year-old at the time, now in their 30s, indicating that they were at a party that Jay-Z was at after the MTV Music Awards. They were in Manhattan. Dad doesn't remember driving 5 hours to pick up a 13-year-old in Manhattan. Turns out they didn't do any investigation. So at that point, there is an issue as to whether or not you were sued without any real basis. And if you can prove that that was intentional, then you can sue somebody back once you have a favorable outcome. In this case, the case was dismissed criminally in Manhattan. Alvin Bragg brought it. He was the same guy that convicted Donald Trump. So the same district attorney dropped these charges. So then Glenn Horowitz goes, hey, you know, you almost put me in jail. I want to sue you now for malicious prosecution.
Okay, and then what's your biggest takeaway from this case? Does it set any legal precedents that we should be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, if you're buying like memorabilia, if you ever watch Pawn Stars, I mean, they always kind of see the provenance. So if you've got something that's pretty valuable, first question is, all right, show me a bill of sale and a certificate of authenticity.
Yeah.
If you have that, then you protect yourself contractually. Because Judge Judy's got a job because people don't put things in writing.
There you go, just like that. Craig, thanks for helping us out today. We appreciate you having on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, and for legal advice, head to ashtonandprice.com or call the number that you see there on the screen, 916-786-7787.